do, of course, is find a way that we can read the book easily. So I normally just take a big one of these clippy things, and I clip it directly to my microphone so that I can look at the microphone and also the book at the same time. We can just find a way here to do this. Okay. All right, now it's a little bit of a bad angle here. Perhaps you have different equipment or ideas, but this is the equipment that I have currently. It's worked for me in the past. Maybe it'll work for you too. If not, find something else, find a different way. You know, there's always other ways, other options of ways of doing things that you need to, if you don't need to, it's all up to you. Anyways, let's go ahead. I'm gonna get a drink of coffee right now. All right, let's go ahead and do this. All right, so I need to kind of move this up a little bit. Now, I know the microphone is right. Let's see if the audio is going. You want to make sure you got to check all your audio. So I have about 3 or 4 different audio microphones going on right now at the current time. So we should be covered on audio. If you're not covered on audio, you may want to check out an audio tutorial for video or just regular audio tutorial. You can do that, and that's a different type of tutorial. This is strictly how to make an ebook. how to make an audiobook. So we're going to start ahead now. And we're gonna go, I can read this right like this. And make sure all the cameras are, okay, all right, we're good. This is chapter 19, Doing Time. Chapter 19, Doing Time, of the Norm Macdonald book, based on a true story, not a memoir. Gotta get warmed up. You sometimes when you're making things, you gotta get warmed up. So. All right, there we go. Prison was a scary place, and the first day was worst of all. The first thing that happened was the guards took away all the stuff I had brought from home. They took away my wallet and my keys, and my 40 pounds of Omaha steaks, and my cake with the file inside. Now, when you're doing sound effects and music, you can, of course, chop these things up, chop them out, chop them in. You can shorten pauses or time. Just make sure that it sounds naturally. What you're looking for is a natural sound to complement your reading. They took away my dirty work hat and my Norm Show t-shirt and my SNL jacket and all the free world clothes, and they made me wear these striped pajamas. They even took away. Now, sometimes you're gonna want to get very serious. You want to make it. You want to change your tone up so that the listener on your audiobook can understand the feelings that you're having as the reader. They even took away my time. But that part was actually pretty cool. Because they gave me a number instead, like I was a robot from outer space. Mine was 602-3102. You may as well stop with your chanting, boys, I answered. You may as well stop. What? You may as well stop with your chanting, boys, I answered. I don't have a single Omaha steak on me. They all got took. The convicts continued their chant. But there was a puzzled tone to it. The guards threw me in where a big sullen man was sitting, on the lower of 2 steel bunks. He looked to be about 300 pounds without an ounce of fat on him. He had a square jaw and a dark forelock, which barely concealed a swastika tattoo. "Hey, Rocco," said one of the guards as he tossed me to the cold, gray floor. "We got some fresh meat for you." "Don't you believe him, Rocco?" I said. They took all my fresh meat in the other room, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're gonna keep it for themselves. Rocco looked me over as the guards left.
What are you in for?
He asked. I explained the whole situation with Sarah Silverman and Dave Attell, and I asked the same thing of him.
Triple murder,
he said. I was shocked. Any fool knows you can't murder a man more than once, and I told Rocco as much. He'd been railroaded on those last 2 counts, and I let him know I'd be more than happy to become his jailhouse lawyer and dedicate my life to gaining his freedom. After all, becoming a jailhouse lawyer had been a boyhood dream of mine, and here I was with an opportunity to make it come true. I knew logically that Rocco was completely innocent of at least 2 of the crimes that he'd been convicted of, and I believed in my heart that he was most likely innocent. After all, if a man is innocent of 2 murders, odds are he's innocent of the 3rd. That is just grade school arithmetic. I couldn't wait to get in front of that jury. I planned to go to the... Sometimes you're going to have stumble over your words. Now, that is perfectly fine. Like I said, what do we say? Cut it up, cut it in, cut it out. I planned to go to the prison library first thing in the morning and start reading law books. And I had a little head start, too. You see, I had every single episode of Matlock. I'll set you free, Rocco. I promise you that. Rocco started to get real excited about this news. He told me his force lawyers had convinced him to plead guilty. We both agreed that that's the last thing anyone should ever do. We were on the same wavelength, and that's important when it comes to a lawyer and his client. The first thing I suggested was that he lose that swastika tattoo. I didn't care personally about a man's politics, but if there's one thing... Now, sometimes you're going to come to a page break. Take a breather. Take a sip of your coffee. And flip the page. And when you're flipping it, just cut in, cut out, or cut up. I learned from watching Matlock, it was this. Juries hate Hitler. Rocco claimed that he had picked his tattoo out of a prison tattoo book.
Is there anything we can do?
He asked. Sure, I can just modify the tattoo, add some lines to it, and easily make it into a tic-tac-toe board.
That sounds good,
said Rocco, but then he began to look. When I asked him what was wrong, Rocco said,
I was just wondering if the tic-tac-toe board is associated with another wicked man of history.
I smiled. Do you consider Wink Martindale historically wicked? Rocco let out a roar of laughter. Everyone knows Wink Martindale. And for the first time, I could see a glimmer of genuine hope. The next day, I went to the prison library to study. I was disheartened when I found out that law books are long, long books. Make me sleepy. A great lawyer must know his weaknesses, and I know almost all of mine. I decided that instead of struggling through these books, I would rely on my vast knowledge of Ben Matlock's work. So Rocco and I began to practice courtroom scenarios in our small cell. I started by asking Rocco, straight out, if he was guilty of any of those 3 murders.
Oh, I'm guilty, all right, that's for sure. And the funny thing is, I have no remorse. I do it again tomorrow.
After hearing this, I made a key decision. Rocco would not be taking the stand. Our courtroom preparation had come to an end, and I felt ready to defend him before a judge.
The next day, I changed Rocco's tattoo from a swastika to the tic-tac-toe word, and while I was at it, I went out one step further. Using Rocco's wide, heavily muscled back as my canvas, I used my needle and green ink to fashion a beautiful image of Wink Martindale in a checkered suit, sitting, asking a contestant a maddeningly easy question. But that night, Rocco woke me up with bad news. He told me he couldn't go through with the appeal. He had been in the joint too long. He was downright institutionalized. He confessed that he was afraid of freedom. I couldn't understand where he was coming from. I missed my freedom more than anything. I loved my freedom.
And here in the Hooskow, they were pretty stingy when it came to my freedom whatsoever. Then Rocco explained the difference between the outside and the inside to me. On the outside, a man rises to power using his ambitions and cunning. On the inside, you make your way up the ropes, and one way and one way only, by the number of fellas you can rape. That's why, within the jail, Rocco's name was spoken in hushed tones. He was a raper's raper. He was staying right here in prison, he told me, because inside he had the necessary skills to command respect and prestige, but outside he was a nobody. I was no longer his lawyer, just another prisoner, and if I knew it was good for me, I was no longer his lawyer, just another prisoner, and if I knew it was good for me, I better start raping. Now, I'd never raped anyone before, and in the free world I had worn that fact as a badge of honor, mentioning it proudly and loudly at dinner parties and social events. Folks admired me for it. Say what you will about old Norm, my friends would often say. He won't rape you. Every time I heard that, it made me feel good inside, like a warm shot of whiskey. But here in the penitentiary, the rules had been turned upside down. I wanted to fit in, but the problem was that I didn't care much for sex with men. I liked men fine when it came to watching football games with them and eating Cheetos and playing video games, but when it came to having sex with them, I just had to grin and bear it.
You got it all wrong,
Rocco explained.
Rape has nothing to do with sex. It's all about the power, buddy.
I gotta admit, when Rocco first told me that, I thought it was about the damn fullest thing a man could say. But the more I chewed on it, the more sense it started to make. Rape was all about making the other guy feel small. Then I'd look big and strong next to it. I'd done similar things in the free world plenty. Spraying a handful of quarters onto a busy thoroughfare and laughing at the homeless. And laughing at the homeless bums dodging cars and trucks to earn their supper. I always felt really big inside when I'd done that. And apparently that's what raping a fella in prison is like. Or so Rocco told me. So I made up my mind there that as soon as the opportunity availed itself, I would take ungentlemanly advantage of some hapless prisoner. I got my opportunity while I was working one night in the machine shop, and I looked over, and there stood Marvin Edelman. Marvin was doing a 5-year bid for Securities and Exchange fraud. He had large black kisses and thin and gray hair and whiskers that made him look just like a rodent with large black glasses. I shouted at him loud so all my fellow inmates could hear. "Hey, Edelman, I'm gonna rape you the same way you raped those people who invested all that money in your Ponzi schemes. The only difference is where you raped them in a metaphorical sense, I'm setting out to..." I stopped my speech. Marvin had fled. I had made the biggest mistake of the novice rapers. I had made my intentions known. The whole yard laughed at me as I turned beet red. I took off in embarrassed rage, determined that I would rape Marvin Edelman before the sun touched the horizon. It took a while, but I finally located Marvin cowering behind a belt sander. That was a good sign. Whenever a guy is cowering, you know that you have the upper hand. I started chasing him. But you know that he was fast and elusive like a jackrabbit wearing large black glasses. I run him full speed thinking I finally have him, but at the last moment he ducked to his left or his right, and I go crashing into a wall. I was dog-tired and gasping heavily when finally I got him cornered. And as I made my final lunge toward him, I tripped and my head hit my head on the belt sander. I don't know how long I was there for, but when I regained consciousness, the first thing I heard was laughter. I looked around. All the prisoners were beside themselves with delight, laughing and poking each other in the sides. The only man who was not laughing was Rocco. He sat in a chair way in the back, but he was close enough that I could see the disappointment in his eyes. I couldn't make sense of any of it, but then I turned around and I saw what the boys in the black and white pajamas convulsing in their mass paroxysm mirth. There behind me was Marvin Edelman, all 130 pounds of him. And what do you suppose Marvin was doing that was so funny that he had everybody busting a gut? Well, he was raping me. That's what. He was raping the hell out of me. You know, I never understood the concept of irony before, but I guess that was it. All right? And I was not a fan. "Get the hell off me, Edelman, and enough with the raping," I said.
Why should I?
"Yeah, why should he?" The prisoners repeated as one. "Yeah, why should he?" The prisoners repeated as one. I was starting to feel pretty powerless. So I had to think and think fast. "I'll tell you why," I said. "Because if you don't cut out the raping and pronto, I'll go to my cell and get my handmade knife, and that'll be the end of you." I made a mental note to fashion myself a handmade knife when I got back to the cell. "But I'm willing to make a deal with you, Edelman. We are both civilized men. You quit raping me right now, and there'll be no hard feelings. And you won't see a reprisal rape out of me either. I promise you that. Marvin stopped his raping for a minute, and I could see by the look in his eyes he was turning the offer over in his mind. I don't know, he said. I kind of like this feeling of power. But rape isn't about power, Marvin. And that gave me just the time I needed. I slammed my elbow into his spectacles. I'm blind, he screamed. And you're raped as well, I said triumphantly, and I began my savage reprisal rape of Marvin Edelman, prisoner 6020311. Now, who's raping whom? I asked. Now, Edelman must have thought this was a rhetorical question because he just whimpered and cried. And my non-rhetorical question hung awkwardly in the air, unanswered, before I proclaimed, I'm raping you. That's who. Just then a guard showed up. You've done your time, McDonald. You're free to go. I am? I asked. I thought I was in for 40 years.
No, 4 months.
Well, I'll be damned. We all had a good laugh at that one. And that is exactly how you make an audiobook. I am glad that you were able to join me for this. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you understand how to add the sound effects. Remember, what did I say? Cut it up, cut it in. If you got to do something like that, you got to do it. You have to do what you have to do. You have to make it pleasant for the audience, pleasant for yourself. Make the experience enjoyable, simple, understanding. If you don't know how to read, I'm sorry that I was not able to explain more about that, but as there are other tutorials out there, I implore you to go check out my fellow YouTubers with the tutorials on how to read, how to write a book maybe, how to do audio, video work, all this sort of stuff. I implore you to ask them to go look for their content in their channels. But if you enjoyed my video, I of course ask you to like and subscribe. And I really enjoy comments, so please comment on what you want to see next as far as tutorials go. Perhaps you want another tutorial on some other aspect of how to make an audiobook. I implore you to ask me. Thank you very much. Please come back. We appreciate it always.